For thousands of years, humans lived in constant fear of three great enemies: famine, plague, and war. These were the primary forces shaping history, endlessly recurring and devastating. Kingdoms rose and fell due to crop failures. Entire cities vanished under the grip of disease, and generations were scarred by endless conflict. But now, for the first time in history, humanity has gained unprecedented control over these ancient adversaries. Instead of starvation, more people today suffer from obesity. Instead of dying from infectious diseases, we struggle with lifestyle-related conditions like diabetes and heart disease. It is a remarkable shift in the human condition. Harari explains that we've entered a new era, one where famine, plague, and war are no longer uncontrollable acts of God, but manageable challenges. The death toll from violence is at an all-time low globally. International cooperation, medical advances, and agricultural technologies have dramatically changed our relationship with these threats. Of course, problems persist, but they are no longer existential for the majority of humankind. Our energy is now directed at different kinds of problems and at new dreams. So what lies ahead for humanity? If we have largely tamed nature's cruelties, Harari suggests that we are now setting our sights on a new agenda: immortality, happiness, and divinity. In other words, we are shifting from seeking survival to seeking godlike powers. This marks a fundamental transformation in our priorities. The questions we now ask ourselves aren't about mere survival. They're about how far we can enhance life itself. The pursuit of immortality is no longer just a myth from ancient legends. Across Silicon Valley and global research centers, scientists and entrepreneurs are racing to hack the human body. Biotech, AI, and neuroengineering are converging to potentially eliminate aging and extend life indefinitely. Harari presents a provocative idea. Homo sapiens may aspire to upgrade themselves into Homo Deus, godlike beings, mastering life and death. But immortality is only part of the vision. Equally compelling is the pursuit of lasting happiness. Human history is filled with suffering and dissatisfaction. Now, with the tools of psychology, neuroscience, and pharmaceuticals, we aim to engineer subjective well-being. The modern human wants not only to live long, but to feel good. We are building technologies not just to survive, but to feel euphoric, serene, and fulfilled. It's the rise of the well-being industry, and it reflects our changing priorities. The third goal, divinity, represents humanity's ambition to transcend its biological roots altogether. Through genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and machine-human integration, we are stepping into territory previously reserved for gods. We may soon create artificial life, manipulate consciousness, and redesign our cognitive abilities. These aren't science fiction fantasies. Harari emphasizes that research already underway today could redefine what it means to be human within this century. No longer focused on mere survival, humanity is reaching for powers once imagined only in mythology. Yet these dreams raise questions that no technology can answer. Questions of meaning, of ethics, of what it means to live a good life when death, pain, and limitation are no longer inevitable. The agenda has changed, but the unknowns are as vast as ever. Humanity's dominance over the planet marks the beginning of a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. Unlike earlier epochs shaped by geological or biological forces, this new age is shaped by humans themselves. Harari explains that Homo sapiens has transformed from an insignificant primate to the most powerful force on Earth. We are now the rulers of nature, changing landscapes, redirecting rivers, altering the atmosphere, and driving species to extinction. This shift did not happen overnight, but its consequences are now unmistakable. The agricultural revolution was the first major step in this transformation. By domesticating plants and animals, humans began shaping the ecosystem to serve their needs. Forests were cleared, wild species were replaced, and biodiversity started to decline. But it was the Industrial Revolution that truly accelerated human impact. The invention of the steam engine, the use of fossil fuels, and the rise of modern economies unleashed an unprecedented wave of transformation, changing not just how we live, but the very structure of the Earth. Today, the evidence of the Anthropocene is everywhere. From melting polar ice caps to polluted oceans and eroding soil, human fingerprints are visible across every corner of the globe. Harari emphasizes that climate change, Mass extinction and the loss of biodiversity are not distant threats. They are current realities. We are altering Earth's ecosystems at a speed and scale unmatched in history. Every year, thousands of species vanish, many before we even discover them. In this epoch, we are no longer passive observers of nature. We are its authors and its executioners. This newfound power comes with immense responsibility. While we are capable of altering the planet, we are not necessarily wise enough to manage it sustainably. Our decisions are driven by short-term economic gains and tribal politics, not long-term ecological thinking. Humanity acts like a careless god, wielding immense influence without a clear understanding of its limits. This imbalance between power and wisdom poses one of the greatest dangers of our era. Yet, not all changes are destructive. Modern civilization has brought remarkable benefits: longer lifespans, fewer deaths from disease, and technological wonders. But the question remains, are we happier? Have our advances translated into deeper well-being? Or have we merely substituted old problems with new ones? This question lingers beneath the surface of our triumphs, suggesting that progress is not always synonymous with purpose. One of the more haunting ideas in this chapter is that the survival of other species now depends on human choice. We decide which animals live and which go extinct, which forests survive and which are paved over. This godlike power is unprecedented. Harari challenges us to recognize the moral and existential weight of our decisions. In the Anthropocene, the fate of life on Earth rests not in nature's hands, but in ours. What kind of gods will we choose to be? The Earth is no longer a wilderness beyond our reach. It has become a system of levers and switches, most of them in human hands. But without a blueprint or guiding principle beyond growth and consumption, we may become victims of our own success. The question is not whether we have power, it's whether we have purpose. What makes Homo sapiens unique? Harari examines the idea of the human spark, the elusive quality that supposedly sets us apart from all other animals. For centuries, philosophers, theologians, and scientists have proposed different answers: reason, language, morality, consciousness, or the soul. While humans are indeed exceptional in many ways, the line separating us from animals is not as clear as we like to believe. Our intelligence is extraordinary, but not entirely unique. Many animals can solve problems, use tools, and communicate in complex ways. Dolphins recognize themselves in mirrors, elephants mourn their dead, and crows can craft tools. What distinguishes us, Harari claims, is our remarkable ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers. We create shared myths, institutions, and systems that allow millions of strangers to work together, whether through religion, money, or law. This cooperative ability gave rise to complex civilizations, vast empires, and intricate economies. It allowed humans to dominate the planet, despite being physically weaker than many predators. While a lone human is no match for a lion, a group of humans, united by shared beliefs and strategies, can hunt, organize, and rule. Our power lies not in muscle, or even individual intelligence, but in collective imagination. Harari challenges the idea of a soul or divine spark as the basis of human uniqueness. Instead, he points to cognitive capabilities that evolved over time through natural selection. Beliefs about human superiority are often rooted in myth rather than biology. In evolutionary terms, we are animals with a special kind of brain, not creatures set apart by destiny or sacred essence. This perspective can be uncomfortable, but it forces a deeper look at the foundation of our values. The scientific worldview has steadily eroded many traditional human-centered beliefs. If we are just another species shaped by biology, and our minds are biochemical algorithms, then where does meaning come from? The more we understand ourselves scientifically, the more we challenge the idea of human exceptionalism. Questions about rights, dignity, and consciousness take on new dimensions when our uniqueness becomes a matter of degree, not kind. As AI and biotechnology advance, the notion of the human spark will face even greater challenges. What happens if machines become more intelligent than us? If consciousness can be simulated or transferred, old frameworks based on soul, spirit, or sacred essence may not withstand the coming revolution. We may be forced to rethink the boundaries between human and machine, nature and technology, life and code. Perhaps our true distinction lies not in some inherent spark, but in our restless curiosity and willingness to question our own identity. We are the only species asking who we are and what we might become. As we move toward Homo Deus, the mirror we hold up to ourselves grows ever more strange. Humans rule the world not because they are the strongest, fastest, or largest species, but because they can tell stories. Harari explores the power of fiction in shaping human history. Myths, religions, ideologies, and legal systems are all built on collective stories, ideas that exist not in nature, but in our shared imagination. Lions don't believe in nations. Wolves don't organize under human rights. But humans create meaning through narratives, and these narratives are what bind millions of individuals into functioning societies. Take money, for instance. Currency has no inherent value. It's merely paper or digital code. Yet billions of people accept it as payment because they believe in the story behind it. Trust in governments, banks, or the global economy. Similarly, corporations are legal fictions. Apple, Toyota, or Google don't physically exist like trees or rivers do. They are networks of contracts, beliefs, and symbols upheld by shared narratives encoded in law and habit. It is the belief that keeps them real. Harari shows that humans live in two realities simultaneously: the objective world of rivers and rocks, and the imagined world of gods, nations, and corporations. The latter is what makes large-scale cooperation possible. While chimpanzees can cooperate in groups of a few dozen, humans routinely coordinate in millions, thanks to the glue of storytelling. These stories are not lies, but intersubjective realities, real because we believe in them together. This is what makes culture both powerful and fragile. Religions are among the oldest and most potent forms of shared storytelling. From the gods of Olympus to the monotheism of Abrahamic faiths, religions provide meaning and moral order. But Harari emphasizes that modern ideologies, like nationalism, capitalism, and humanism, function similarly. They tell us who we are, what is valuable, and what our destiny should be. Whether it's belief in the free market, the nation-state, or universal human rights, these are all narratives that guide behavior and justify institutions. What sets humans apart is not merely our intelligence, but our ability to create and reshape meaning. Harari highlights that Homo sapiens is a storytelling animal, and history is largely a battle of stories. The most powerful myths win not by being true, but by being believed and acted upon. Empires rise and fall based on which stories people are willing to fight and die for. This gives fiction an evolutionary function. It enables coordination, resilience, and innovation at scales no other species can achieve. Yet there is a double edge to this narrative power. The same stories that unite can also divide. Religious wars, ideological conflicts, and genocides have often been driven by competing fictions. Harari warns that humans can become enslaved by their own myths, killing and dying for symbols that exist only in their minds. As our ability to manipulate biology and code grows, so too does the need to carefully examine which stories we choose to believe. Fiction becomes a force of creation or destruction. The future of Homo sapiens will depend on the stories we tell about ourselves, about intelligence, consciousness, life, and progress. As artificial intelligence begins crafting its own narratives, and biotechnology rewrites the very code of life, humanity must decide whether it remains the author of its destiny or becomes a character in someone else's plot. Our superpower is fiction, and the next chapter is still unwritten. Human history over the past several centuries has been shaped by the unlikely alliance between two seemingly contradictory forces: science and religion. Harari refers to this dynamic relationship as the odd couple, a powerful, sometimes tense partnership that has steered the modern world. While science is based on observation, doubt, and experimentation, religion often rests on faith, revelation, and authority. Yet, the two have worked together in surprising ways, particularly in building civilizations and driving progress. Science, in its purest form, doesn't tell us what we should do. It tells us what is possible. It is descriptive, not prescriptive. It can reveal the age of the universe or the genetic cause of a disease, but it cannot determine moral priorities. That's where religion historically came in. Religion provided purpose, values, and meaning. It gave kings legitimacy, guided ethical behavior, and answered the why of existence. Harari points out that this division of labor, science explaining the how, religion supplying the why, held civilization together for centuries. But as modernity advanced, this balance began to shift. Scientific revolutions, from Newton to Darwin to Einstein, began to encroach on questions once reserved for religion. Evolution challenged the biblical account of creation. Neuroscience began to explore the roots of consciousness. The boundaries between facts and values started to blur. Harari explains that science did not simply replace religion. Instead, it changed the kinds of questions people ask. The sacred was no longer untouchable. Interestingly, despite their differences, religion and science have collaborated when their interests aligned. Harari offers the example of how religious institutions supported scientific exploration, if it promised national power or colonial expansion. In the modern era, governments fund scientific research that boosts economic growth or military strength, goals once justified through religious or ideological narratives. The pursuit of power has often united science and religion under a common banner, even if their worldviews remain fundamentally different. Humanism, the modern belief system that places human well-being and freedom at the center of value, is itself a child of both religious tradition and scientific rationality. It borrows the ethical concerns of religion while relying on the explanatory power of science. Harari suggests that we now live in a world dominated by humanist ideology, where truth is what benefits humans, and morality is measured in terms of happiness and suffering. This is a new fusion, a worldview born from an ancient pair that once stood at odds. However, as we move into the 21st century, the old couple may no longer be enough to handle what's coming. Biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and algorithms are raising questions neither religion nor traditional science is fully equipped to address. When machines can read emotions better than humans, or when we can genetically design our children, what ethical framework will guide us? Harari emphasizes that we may be entering an era where we need entirely new myths, new philosophies, stories that neither ancient religion nor Enlightenment science ever imagined. The relationship between science and religion has always been complex, part rivalry, part alliance. As the pace of discovery accelerates and our tools grow more powerful, this odd couple faces its greatest test yet. Will science and faith evolve into something new together? Or will they finally part ways as humanity charts an unfamiliar course toward Homo Deus? In this chapter, Harari introduces what he calls the modern covenant, a new agreement forged between humans and the forces of progress. For most of history, humans resigned themselves to suffering. Plagues, famines, and wars were seen as inevitable, even divinely ordained. But the modern age brought a radical shift. Instead of waiting for paradise in the afterlife, people began building paradise here on Earth. The new promise was simple yet revolutionary. Give us power over nature, and we will deliver peace, prosperity, and happiness. This shift laid the foundation for modern ideologies. Liberalism, socialism, communism, and capitalism, though very different, all agreed on one principle. Human beings could reshape their destiny through knowledge and collective effort. The focus moved from heavenly salvation to earthly success. Scientific research, economic development, and education were not just tools, but sacred duties. Progress became the new religion. In return, humans believed, tomorrow would always be better than today. The modern covenant redefined how we see time. Ancient cultures viewed history as cyclical, everything rising and falling in endless repetition. But modernity views time as linear, always moving forward. This belief fuels everything from stock markets to school curriculums. Harari notes how deeply we trust in progress. New inventions, cures, ideas, and improvements are not just expected, they're demanded. Stagnation is considered failure. The future is no longer a mystery, it's a project. This mindset also reshaped our relationship with risk. In the past, people accepted misfortunes as acts of God, but in the modern era, every disaster becomes a problem to be solved. If a plane crashes, we don't pray. We investigate. If an economic crisis erupts, we don't perform rituals. We revise policies. Harari shows that this sense of control has led to incredible achievements, but it also burdens us with overwhelming responsibility. Every problem now carries the expectation of a solution. The driving force behind this modern promise is growth. Economies must grow, Populations must grow, knowledge must grow, endlessly. Without growth, the modern covenant falters. Harari points out that this is not a law of nature, but a cultural belief. Growth keeps societies stable, governments funded, and individuals hopeful. It justifies everything from technological disruption to environmental exploitation. But it also locks us into a dangerous cycle where failure to grow is seen as a crisis. Despite its achievements, the modern covenant has not fulfilled all its promises. Billions still suffer, inequality rises, and ecological collapse looms. Harari warns that our pursuit of progress may have unintended consequences. If we continue to trust blindly in technology and economic expansion without redefining our values, we risk turning the dream of paradise into a nightmare. Progress alone cannot guarantee meaning, justice, or sustainability. These must be chosen and cultivated. The modern covenant has brought humanity to the brink of godlike power over life, death, and the environment itself. But with that power comes a profound question. What will we do with it? Will we use our tools to enhance life for all? Or will we push ourselves into a trap of endless desire and imbalance? Harari sets the stage for the deeper challenges ahead. Not of how we advance, but why we advance, and to what end. Harari begins this chapter by tracing the emergence of humanism, the belief system that places the individual at the center of meaning. Unlike traditional religions that look to gods or divine law for authority, humanism teaches that truth comes from within. Your feelings, experiences, and choices are what determine what is good, true, and beautiful. This revolution didn't happen overnight. It emerged slowly over centuries, building upon Enlightenment ideas, scientific discoveries, and the collapse of religious certainty. Humanism reshaped every major institution in society. In politics, democracy became legitimate, not because it was ordained by heaven, but because it reflected the will of the people. In economics, consumerism emerged from the idea that individual desires should guide the market. In art, beauty ceased to be measured by sacred standards. It became whatever moved or inspired the viewer. Even in morality, right and wrong were no longer defined by scripture, but by personal empathy and human well-being. Education also transformed under humanism. Instead of drilling students in religious doctrine or royal loyalty, schools began to focus on individual potential. Teachers were tasked with helping students discover their passions, think critically, and express their own voices. Harari shows how this belief, that the self is the ultimate source of truth, has come to define how modern societies operate. From self-help books to social media, the message is consistent. Look within, trust yourself, follow your heart. But humanism isn't one idea. It branches into multiple forms. Harari outlines three: liberal humanism, which values individual freedom and rights; socialist humanism, which emphasizes equality and collective welfare; and evolutionary humanism, which seeks to improve the human species through strength and competition. Each version places humans at the center, but they disagree about what kind of humans and what kind of future we should pursue. This internal diversity has led to both progress and conflict. In the 20th century, these branches clashed violently. Fascism and Nazism, forms of evolutionary humanism, emphasized the survival of the fittest and sought to engineer stronger societies through brutal means. Liberal and socialist humanism fought back, leading to world wars, revolutions, and global upheaval. Eventually, liberal humanism emerged as the dominant ideology, particularly after the Cold War, promoting democracy, human rights, and free markets as the ultimate path forward. Harari argues that humanism succeeded not because it was perfect, but because it proved incredibly adaptable. It merged with science and technology, embraced globalization, and shaped cultural norms across the world. Yet now it faces new challenges. As artificial intelligence begins to outperform humans in decision-making, and biotechnology offers ways to reprogram our minds and bodies, the core idea of humanism, that the human experience is the highest source of meaning, is being questioned. We are standing at a turning point. Humanism gave us unprecedented freedom and dignity, but it also made us deeply reliant on ourselves. As we enter an era where machines understand us better than we understand ourselves, Harari hints at the coming crisis. If humans are no longer the source of meaning, what will take their place? This chapter sets the philosophical foundation for what comes next. the possible end of human-centered thinking and the beginning of something entirely new. As Harari turns his attention to the future, he warns us about a profound transformation already underway: the fusion of biology and technology. For centuries, humanism taught us to listen to our feelings, to look inward for meaning. But now, science is beginning to decode those feelings, not as mysterious inner truths, but as biochemical algorithms. Emotions like love, fear, or desire are increasingly understood as chemical reactions, shaped by evolution, measurable and manipulatable. At the heart of this shift is the idea that organisms are algorithms. Just as Google Maps can process billions of data points to recommend the fastest route, scientists now suggest that humans too are governed by input, processing, and output. The decisions we make, whom to marry, what to eat, whether to fight or flee, are not sacred mysteries, but complex calculations based on genes, hormones, and past experiences. Harari emphasizes that this realization doesn't diminish us. It simply reframes what it means to be human. With this algorithmic understanding of life, a new revolution is brewing in the lab: the ability to hack the human body and mind. Technologies like brain-computer interfaces, genetic engineering, and neuro-enhancing drugs are not science fiction. They're happening now. We are beginning to rewire what we feel, how we think, even how we learn and remember. The ancient belief that the soul is untouchable is being replaced by the idea that everything about us, even our personality, can be modified. But with power comes danger. Harari warns that we're unleashing forces we barely understand. What happens when governments or corporations begin to hack not just markets and preferences, but consciousness itself? If algorithms can predict your desires before you're even aware of them, who's really in control? You or the system feeding your mind with curated options and emotions? The risk is not just manipulation, but a loss of free will as we become more transparent to machines than to ourselves. Another major concern is inequality. If cognitive enhancements and genetic upgrades are available only to the rich, we could see the rise of a new biological caste system, a world divided not just by wealth or education, but by actual engineered ability. In the past, inequality was tolerated because all humans were still biologically equal. But if humans begin to design themselves, we could enter an age where some are literally more advanced forms of life than others. This, Harari argues, is a recipe for profound social instability. This chapter doesn't offer comfort. It's a stark spotlight on the trajectory of science and its potential consequences. The breakthroughs of the lab may heal disease and extend life, but they also contain a time bomb: the ability to redefine humanity itself. When we start tampering with consciousness and emotion, we are not just improving life, we're rewriting its code. And once we cross that line, there may be no way to return to a simpler past. Harari leaves us with a chilling but essential insight. The greatest scientific discovery of the 21st century may be that life has no soul, no spirit, only data. And once this belief takes root, it opens the door to a new kind of evolution, not driven by natural selection, but by intelligent design. Not by God's will, but by human hands. The laboratory has become the new temple, and the time bomb is already ticking. In this chapter, Harari explores a pivotal shift he calls the Great Decoupling, the growing separation between intelligence and consciousness. For thousands of years, the two were inseparable. Only conscious beings could think, solve problems, and make decisions. But today, algorithms are proving that intelligence doesn't need consciousness. A self-driving car can navigate traffic, a language model can write poetry, and a medical algorithm can diagnose diseases, all without feelings, awareness, or subjective experience. This decoupling shakes the very foundation of human identity. We used to believe we were special because we were the smartest creatures on Earth. Now, machines are catching up, and in some tasks, already outperforming us. But Harari insists that intelligence is not sacred. It's a tool, a function. Consciousness, on the other hand, is what makes life feel meaningful. Yet, in the eyes of data-driven systems, consciousness is irrelevant. What matters is performance, speed, and efficiency, not subjective experience. Harari explains that this shift is not just philosophical, it's economic and political. For centuries, Human labor was valued because of the unique combination of brain and awareness. But now, as algorithms become smarter, humans may lose their central role in the labor market. A truck driver with a lifetime of experience may be replaced by a machine that never gets tired, never makes emotional decisions, and never demands a paycheck. What happens to billions of people when intelligence is outsourced? The impact is already visible. Automated systems are replacing human workers in industries from agriculture to finance. In the past, machines replaced muscle. Today, they are replacing minds. And unlike the Industrial Revolution, where displaced workers could eventually be retrained, the AI revolution may create a useless class. People whose skills are simply no longer needed, no matter how much they try to adapt. Harari stresses that this isn't a prediction, it's an emerging reality. Yet this raises a deeper moral question. If intelligence can exist without consciousness, and if machines outperform humans in more and more domains, does that mean we are obsolete? Harari reminds us that being conscious doesn't guarantee power. In the future, systems that feel nothing might govern systems that feel everything. A government algorithm might decide public policy, not out of malice or empathy, but based on data. Meanwhile, humans may still feel anger, love, or fear, but their emotions will carry less and less weight. This decoupling also challenges the legal and ethical structures we've built. Rights, justice, and responsibility all assume a conscious agent behind every action. But what happens when a decision is made by an intelligent yet unconscious system? Who is accountable? The programmer, the machine? Harari paints a picture of a world where moral frameworks lag behind technological capacity, and where societies must grapple with decisions made by entities that don't feel the consequences. As we rush forward, Harari encourages us to ask the hardest question of all. If intelligence is no longer tied to consciousness, and if consciousness is no longer tied to power, then what role, if any, do humans have in a world run by non-conscious algorithms? The great decoupling has begun, and it may redefine not just our economy or politics, but our place in the story of life itself. Harari introduces a provocative idea: the rise of a new faith he calls dataism. The belief that the universe consists of data flows, and that everything, including human experience, can be understood as information processing. Dataism claims that value lies not in individuals or even conscious beings, but in the efficient transmission and processing of data. This worldview sees algorithms and networks as the highest form of intelligence. In the age of big data and artificial intelligence, Harari argues, humans are becoming nodes in vast informational systems. Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are increasingly tracked, measured, and analyzed. The value of individuals is often judged by their data output, how much they contribute to networks or enhance system efficiency. Dataism challenges traditional humanist ideas that put individual experience and consciousness at the center. Unlike previous religions that emphasized meaning, faith, or human uniqueness, Dataism sees the world as a flow of information, with no privileged observer. It holds that the better an organism or machine is at processing data, the more valuable it is. Harari suggests that this may lead to a future where algorithms, not humans, make the most important decisions, because they can handle far more information, faster, and more accurately. Dataism also implies a radical reshaping of ethics and politics. Traditional morality centers on human feelings and experiences, but dataism values data flows themselves, regardless of the subjective experience behind them. This can lead to troubling questions. Should an algorithm prioritize the happiness of many over the suffering of a few? Or should it optimize for the health of the system, even if that means sacrificing individuals? Harari points out that many of today's technologies already operate on dataist principles. Social media platforms optimize for user engagement by predicting and influencing behavior. Governments deploy surveillance systems to collect massive amounts of data for security or control. Corporations analyze consumer data to maximize profit. In all these cases, the individual becomes less important than the data generated and consumed. Yet, dataism is not just a scientific theory. It is becoming a cultural and ideological force. People increasingly trust algorithms to guide their choices, from medical diagnoses to romantic matches. Harari warns that surrendering decision-making to data processing systems could lead to a loss of human autonomy and a redefinition of free will. If algorithms know us better than we know ourselves, what becomes of human freedom? In closing this chapter, Harari challenges us to consider the consequences of placing faith in data above all else. Will dataism liberate us by offering greater understanding and control? Or will it reduce humans to mere data points, insignificant in the grand flow of information? The emergence of dataism may mark the next great turning point in the story of Homo sapiens. As we move from humans at the center to data at the core, Harari begins by exploring the mysterious nature of consciousness, the subjective experience that defines what it means to be alive. Despite centuries of philosophical inquiry and scientific research, consciousness remains elusive, resisting clear definition or explanation. It is not simply brain activity, but the felt experience of awareness, the inner life of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Harari stresses that understanding consciousness is not just a scientific puzzle, but a central question for the future of humanity. Throughout history, many cultures assumed consciousness was unique to humans or certain animals. Yet, modern science reveals consciousness exists on a spectrum. Some simpler creatures show signs of awareness, while complex machines now mimic aspects of intelligence, but lack subjective experience. Harari highlights that this distinction is crucial. A machine may process data without feeling anything. The ocean of consciousness is still largely unexplored territory, both scientifically and ethically. Harari points out that modern technology challenges traditional views of consciousness. Brain scans and neural mapping reveal how physical processes correlate with mental states, but they don't explain why sensations feel like something. This gap, known as the hard problem of consciousness, may never be fully solved. Nonetheless, as technology advances, we face the possibility of creating entities that behave intelligently without any inner experience, raising questions about rights and moral status. The chapter delves into the implications of consciousness for our sense of self. Humanism elevated the individual conscious mind as the source of meaning and identity. But if consciousness is a product of biological processes, subject to manipulation, it raises questions about authenticity. Could we engineer consciousness, or even erase it? What does that mean for concepts like free will, personal responsibility, or the soul? Harari also explores the spiritual and philosophical reactions to these scientific findings. Some may see the reduction of consciousness to physical processes as dehumanizing, while others embrace it as an opportunity for deeper understanding. The idea that consciousness is not eternal or unique may challenge religious beliefs, but it also encourages a more humble, interconnected view of life. Importantly, Harari warns that the future of consciousness may involve merging with machines. Brain-computer interfaces and neurotechnology might expand or alter our conscious experience, creating new forms of awareness. This evolution could blur the lines between biological and artificial life, prompting profound ethical and existential dilemmas. Who will control these technologies, and who decides what consciousness should be? Ultimately, Harari invites us to reconsider what consciousness means in a world where humans are no longer the sole conscious entities. The ocean of consciousness may one day include intelligent machines or even collective minds. How humanity navigates this uncharted water will shape not only the future of life on Earth, but the very essence of what it means to be alive. Harari opens this chapter by emphasizing the unique power of stories in shaping human history. From ancient myths to modern narratives, stories have been humanity's way of creating meaning, organizing societies, and forging identities. Unlike biological instincts or pure data, stories weave facts into coherent frameworks that influence our beliefs, emotions, and behaviors on a mass scale. They are the invisible glue binding individuals into communities and nations. He explains that storytelling allowed Homo sapiens to cooperate flexibly and at large scale. Shared myths about gods, laws, and rights helped strangers trust each other and work together for common goals. Harari argues that this collective imagination is what made possible the rise of civilizations, religions, and empires. Without stories, social structures would crumble into chaos, as humans lack the innate capacity to cooperate in large groups without shared beliefs. The chapter examines the evolution of stories in the modern era. Harari notes that science, ideology, and capitalism are themselves stories, complex narratives that shape our understanding of reality. For instance, Money has value only because we collectively believe in it. Similarly, human rights exist because societies tell stories about dignity and equality. These narratives, while abstract, have real consequences, guiding political decisions, economic systems, and cultural norms. Harari explores the tension between traditional stories and emerging narratives shaped by data and technology. As algorithms begin to predict and influence human behavior, the role of storytelling may shift. Instead of voluntary belief, people might be nudged or manipulated by invisible forces, eroding the authenticity of collective myths. This poses a challenge for human autonomy and raises questions about who controls the stories of the future. The chapter also delves into the ethical dimension of storytelling. Stories can inspire empathy and cooperation, but can also justify violence and exclusion. Harari highlights how nationalist myths or ideological dogmas have fueled conflicts and oppression. Understanding the power of stories is crucial for navigating political and social challenges in the 21st century, as misinformation and propaganda spread faster than ever before. In the digital age, new platforms and media transform how stories are told and consumed. Social media, virtual reality, and AI-generated content create unprecedented possibilities and risks. Harari warns that while these technologies can democratize storytelling, they also enable the rapid spread of false narratives and echo chambers. The future of truth and trust may depend on how well societies adapt to these changes. Harari closes the chapter by reminding us that despite technological advances, humans remain storytellers at heart. Our ability to imagine and share narratives continues to shape our identities and futures. The challenge ahead is to cultivate stories that unite rather than divide, that promote understanding rather than fear. The stories we choose to tell will determine the course of humanity's next chapter. Harari begins by exploring the concept of time as one of humanity's greatest mysteries and tools. Unlike other animals, humans possess a unique ability to mentally travel through time, to recall the past, imagine the future, and plan accordingly. This mental time travel has shaped culture, technology, and society, allowing us to learn from experience and anticipate challenges yet to come. Yet, despite this gift, our understanding of time remains incomplete. The chapter discusses how science transformed our view of time. Newton described time as absolute and universal, flowing evenly for all observers. Einstein shattered this notion, revealing that time is relative and malleable, intertwined with space in a four-dimensional fabric. This insight revolutionized physics, but also unsettled our everyday experience, challenging intuitive notions about past, present, and future. Harari then connects these scientific ideas to human experience and decision-making. While physics shows time as flexible, humans perceive it as linear and directional, a relentless march forward. This perception underlies how we tell stories, build memories, and structure societies. It fuels both hope and anxiety, as the future is unknown and the past immutable. Our mental time machines guide behavior, but can also trap us in regrets or fears. Advances in technology are now changing how we relate to time. Digital devices allow instant communication across vast distances, collapsing geographical time. Algorithms predict our behaviors and choices, anticipating needs before we consciously recognize them. Harari suggests that as data flows become continuous and real-time, the traditional human experience of time may fragment, challenging our ability to live in the present moment. The chapter explores the ethical and existential implications of controlling time. Medical technologies extend lifespans, potentially altering our relationship with the future. Virtual reality and artificial intelligence may allow immersive experiences of alternate timelines or simulations. But these technologies also risk disconnecting us from the shared reality that gives time meaning. A shared story with a past, present, and future. Harari warns that as we master time manipulation, we must be careful not to lose sight of the human dimension. The ability to forecast and control may breed hubris, detaching us from the natural rhythms of life and the uncertainties that make existence meaningful. The challenge is to harness our time machines to enhance life, without becoming slaves to efficiency, prediction, or artificial control. In closing, Harari reflects on the paradox of time. It is both a constraint and a gift. Our unique capacity to navigate past and future underpins civilization and innovation. Yet, the flow of time also reminds us of mortality and change. How humanity balances this paradox will shape not only our fate, but the evolution of consciousness itself. Harari begins by highlighting the explosion of data as one of the defining features of the 21st century. Every click, swipe, and interaction generates a massive stream of information, a digital ocean that is reshaping how humans live, think, and interact. This ocean is so vast and dynamic that traditional ways of understanding and managing information become obsolete. In this new era, data itself is a resource more valuable than oil or gold. He explains that the rise of big data transforms not only business and technology, but also power structures. Those who control data control insight, influence, and increasingly, the future. Governments, corporations, and tech giants mine this ocean to predict behaviors, manipulate choices, and automate decisions. Harari warns that this concentration of power raises profound questions about privacy, freedom, and democracy. Harari explores how data is changing our understanding of human identity. Traditional notions of selfhood, based on memories, beliefs, and consciousness, are being supplemented, and sometimes supplanted, by data profiles that track behavior in minute detail. These digital identities are dynamic, manipulable, and often more real to algorithms than the individuals themselves, blurring boundaries between person and data. The chapter delves into the ethical dilemmas posed by the data ocean. Harari asks, who owns data? Who decides how it's used? And how do we protect individuals when their most intimate details become commodified and vulnerable? The rapid pace of technological change outstrips existing laws and norms, leaving society scrambling to catch up with new realities. Harari also discusses the emerging alliance between data and artificial intelligence. Machine learning thrives on vast datasets, enabling computers to recognize patterns and make predictions beyond human capability. This synergy accelerates innovation, but also risks creating opaque systems where decision-making becomes inscrutable and uncontestable. Understanding and regulating these forces is crucial for shaping a fair future. Despite the challenges, Harari notes that data also offers tremendous opportunities. It can help solve complex problems like disease, climate change, and social inequality by revealing hidden patterns and enabling precise interventions. The ocean of data, if navigated wisely, can become a tool for human flourishing rather than domination. Harari concludes by urging a collective reckoning with the data revolution. As humanity dives deeper into this ocean, we must develop new frameworks of ethics, governance, and awareness. The future depends on how well we balance innovation with responsibility, freedom with security, and data's power with human values. Harari begins by discussing humanity's historic battle against death, the ultimate enemy. For centuries, death was accepted as an inevitable fate, a natural conclusion to life. But with advancements in medicine, biology, and technology, the idea of death as absolute is being challenged. Humans are now able to extend lifespans dramatically, curing diseases once thought incurable and pushing the boundaries of aging. The chapter explores how modern science approaches death not as a destiny, but as a technical problem to be solved. Researchers study genetics, cellular regeneration, and artificial organs, seeking to delay or even eliminate death. Harari describes ambitious projects aiming to turn death into a manageable condition, similar to other illnesses. This shift redefines death from a final event into a potentially reversible process. Harari points out the profound societal implications of conquering death. Longer lifespans could transform social structures, economies, and personal identities. Questions arise about population growth, resource distribution, and intergenerational relationships. If people live for centuries, how will concepts like retirement, career, and family evolve? The chapter urges us to consider not only the scientific possibilities, but the ethical and practical consequences. The author also discusses cultural attitudes toward death and immortality. While many religious traditions see death as a passage or spiritual necessity, the emerging biomedical worldview challenges these beliefs. Harari reflects on how this scientific approach to death might change human meaning and purpose, potentially altering the stories we tell about life and what comes after. Harari highlights that the quest to overcome death is part of a broader human desire to achieve Homo Deus status, godlike mastery over nature and biology. Yet, he warns, the pursuit of immortality may come with unintended risks. Extending life without addressing deeper social and psychological issues could lead to new forms of inequality, despair, or stagnation. The chapter also considers the technical challenges that remain. Despite progress, aging is a complex biological process intertwined with countless cellular mechanisms. Harari explains that completely eradicating death might be centuries away, and that the journey itself will reshape medicine, ethics, and human aspirations. In closing, Harari invites reflection on what it means to live in a world where death is no longer certain. The last days of death could redefine humanity's relationship with time, meaning, and mortality itself. How we navigate this transformation will determine whether the promise of immortality becomes a blessing or a curse. Harari explores the emerging phenomenon he calls the Great Decoupling, where intelligence and consciousness, once inseparably linked, begin to diverge. In the past, intelligent behavior was always accompanied by subjective experience. However, the rise of artificial intelligence challenges this assumption, as machines can perform complex cognitive tasks without possessing consciousness or feelings. This decoupling forces us to rethink what it means to be intelligent or alive. Algorithms can outperform humans in data processing, pattern recognition, and decision-making, yet they lack awareness, desires, or suffering. Harari warns that as AI surpasses human intelligence, society must confront the ethical implications of creating entities that are highly capable but entirely unfeeling. Harari notes that this divergence could lead to profound social upheaval. Many traditional jobs, relying on intelligence, may be replaced by AI systems. Humans might lose their economic and social roles if intelligence alone determines value. Meanwhile, consciousness, the subjective experience central to human identity, may become irrelevant in economic terms, sparking a crisis in meaning and purpose. The chapter examines how this decoupling affects human self-understanding. If intelligence and consciousness are separable, what happens to human uniqueness? Harari suggests that new social hierarchies may form based on who controls intelligent systems, rather than who possesses consciousness, challenging humanist ideals that place consciousness at the core of value. He further discusses the risks of creating superintelligent but unconscious systems. Such systems might optimize for goals indifferent to human welfare or values, operating purely on data and efficiency. Without consciousness, these AIs would have no empathy or morality, making their decisions potentially cold and ruthless. Harari urges policymakers and societies to carefully consider the implications of this great decoupling. Questions of regulation, control, and ethics will become increasingly urgent. How do we integrate intelligent machines into society without losing human dignity? What safeguards can ensure that intelligence serves conscious beings rather than replacing them? In conclusion, Harari frames the Great Decoupling as a pivotal moment in the evolution of life and intelligence. Humanity stands at a crossroads where intelligence may no longer be a uniquely human attribute, and consciousness might become a rare or even obsolete trait. How we respond will shape the future of civilization and the meaning of existence itself. Harari begins by addressing the enigmatic nature of consciousness, the subjective experience that forms the core of our being. Unlike intelligence, consciousness cannot be easily measured or quantified, yet it colors every moment of our existence. This ocean of consciousness remains one of the greatest mysteries in science and philosophy, resisting reduction to simple biological or computational explanations. He highlights that many animals display varying degrees of consciousness, suggesting it exists on a continuum rather than as a binary property. Some creatures may possess rich inner lives, while others have only rudimentary awareness. This realization challenges human exceptionalism and forces us to reconsider our ethical obligations toward other forms of life. Harari contrasts consciousness with intelligence, noting that current AI systems can exhibit remarkable intelligence without any trace of subjective experience. Machines can process data, recognize patterns, and make decisions, but they do not feel anything. This distinction raises profound questions about what it means to be alive and what attributes confer moral consideration. The chapter explores scientific efforts to understand consciousness through brain research and cognitive science. Although neural correlates of conscious experience are being mapped, the hard problem of why and how subjective experience arises from physical processes remains unsolved. Harari emphasizes that this gap highlights the limits of reductionist science. Harari also discusses the potential future impact of technologies that might alter or replicate consciousness. Brain-computer interfaces and neuroengineering could change how consciousness is experienced, or even create artificial conscious entities. These possibilities raise new ethical dilemmas about identity, rights, and the nature of personhood. He warns that the rise of AI and data-driven systems might shift society toward valuing intelligence over consciousness, potentially marginalizing subjective experience. If economic and political systems prioritize efficiency and prediction, the rich inner lives of conscious beings may be undervalued or ignored. In closing, Harari invites readers to reflect on the profound significance of consciousness in a world increasingly dominated by data and algorithms. The future of consciousness, and how we choose to preserve or transform it, will define the essence of what it means to be human in the centuries to come. Harari introduces the concept of a new emerging belief system he calls the data religion. In this faith, data and algorithms are seen not just as tools, but as sources of ultimate authority and truth. Just as traditional religions promised salvation through gods, the data religion promises enlightenment and progress through access to ever more data and the power of computation. He explains that this new religion is rooted in the belief that all phenomena, including human behavior and decision-making, can be understood and predicted through data analysis. Its core tenet is that the universe is a data processing system, and understanding this system fully will unlock the secrets of life, consciousness, and even free will. Harari discusses how this faith shapes societal values, prioritizing data collection, surveillance, and algorithmic governance. Governments and corporations increasingly rely on data-driven systems to optimize everything from healthcare to criminal justice. The belief in data's infallibility risks sidelining human judgment, ethics, and empathy. The chapter explores the tension between the data religion and humanistic values. While data can improve decision-making, Harari warns it cannot replace subjective experiences, moral responsibility, or the nuances of human relationships. Blind faith in algorithms risks creating societies governed by cold calculations rather than compassion. Harari also points to the rise of data cults and techno-utopianism, where followers worship innovation and technological progress as the path to salvation. This mindset can marginalize dissent and overlook the ethical dilemmas posed by unchecked technological power, surveillance, and loss of privacy. He raises critical questions about the role of data in shaping the future of democracy and freedom. If decisions are increasingly made by algorithms, what happens to accountability? Who controls the data gods, and how can societies ensure that this power is wielded fairly and transparently? In conclusion, Harari challenges readers to critically examine their relationship with data and technology. The data religion offers promises of progress, but also dangers of dehumanization. How humanity negotiates this new faith will shape the trajectory of civilization and the meaning of life itself. Harari begins by addressing the unprecedented power of modern biotechnology and genetic engineering. Scientists now possess the ability to rewrite the code of life, altering organisms at their most fundamental level. This scientific revolution promises enormous benefits, from curing diseases to enhancing human capabilities, but it also carries profound risks. He highlights that these advancements blur the boundary between natural and artificial. Humans no longer merely adapt to nature. They are becoming the architects of their own biology. The capacity to redesign life raises ethical dilemmas about what it means to be human, the limits of intervention, and the consequences of playing God. Harari warns of potential dangers, describing laboratories as ticking time bombs. Accidental releases of engineered organisms or intentional misuse for bioweapons could unleash catastrophic consequences. The complexity and unpredictability of biological systems make regulation and control extremely difficult. The chapter explores how genetic engineering might exacerbate social inequalities. Access to enhancement technologies could be limited to the wealthy, creating new forms of discrimination and social stratification. Harari stresses the importance of considering the societal impacts alongside scientific progress. He also discusses the challenge of governance and international cooperation. Biotechnology's dual-use nature, beneficial and potentially harmful, requires global frameworks to manage risks. Yet, political and economic interests often hinder effective regulation, leaving humanity vulnerable. Harari reflects on the philosophical implications of redesigning life. If humans can alter their own biology, what happens to identity, free will, and the concept of the soul? The power to create new life forms forces us to reconsider ethical frameworks developed over millennia. In closing, Harari calls for caution and wisdom. While biotechnology offers transformative potential, it demands responsibility and humility. The choices made today in laboratories will shape the future of life on Earth, for better or worse. In this pivotal chapter, Harari turns inward, urging humanity to face the ultimate question in the age of data, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. Who are we? As we move toward potentially upgrading ourselves into gods, the ancient commandment to know thyself becomes more urgent than ever. Yet paradoxically, just as our technological powers increase, our understanding of our own minds and selves becomes more fragile and confused. Harari explores how traditional ideas about the self, crafted by religion, philosophy, and psychology, are being dismantled by scientific discoveries. Neuroscience reveals that what we think of as the self may just be a complex interplay of brain chemicals and neural pathways. Our decisions and emotions, once thought to arise from a unified soul or inner voice, increasingly appear to be the result of algorithms running in the brain. He explains that the more we study the human mind, the more we find that it is composed of multiple interacting processes, none of which can be identified as a single enduring self. Instead of being a single voice, the mind is a chorus. This challenges the foundations of moral responsibility, personal identity, and even consciousness itself. What does it mean to be you if there is no singular, stable you to begin with? Harari ties this insight back to the rise of AI and dataism. Algorithms, external to us, may soon know our preferences, desires, and decisions better than we do ourselves. Google, Amazon, and Facebook already track our behaviors and make recommendations that often feel more accurate than our own instincts. If we come to trust these systems more than our own judgment, we may begin outsourcing our sense of self entirely. The chapter delves into the risks of such a shift. If external systems come to define who we are, autonomy and freedom may erode. Harari warns that knowing thyself could be replaced with, let the algorithm know you. In such a world, the internal world of subjective experience may lose its authority, giving way to data-driven definitions of identity. At the same time, Harari acknowledges that this new understanding of the self can be liberating. If we realize that the self is a construction, we might become more compassionate, less judgmental, and more adaptable. Understanding the mechanics of our minds can empower us to overcome biases, habits, and limitations that have long bound us. In closing, Harari challenges the reader to embrace both technological advancement and deep self-inquiry. As we enter the era of Homo Deus, our greatest task may not be to conquer the universe, but to truly understand ourselves before we lose the ability, or the right, to do so. In this culminating chapter, Harari presents the central theme that ties the future of humankind to a new cosmic force: data flows. He argues that just as religions once claimed authority by interpreting divine messages and humanism elevated individual feelings as the ultimate truth, the emerging worldview of the 21st century sees value in the free and constant flow of information. Dataism, the belief system of the future, considers the universe not in terms of gods or souls, but in terms of data streams and computational power. Harari outlines how modern life increasingly revolves around generating, processing, and transmitting data. Every aspect of human existence, biology, economics, politics, even emotions, is being translated into data points. From smartwatches that monitor heartbeats to governments using predictive algorithms for surveillance, data is becoming the new currency of power, truth, and meaning. He introduces the idea that organisms themselves, humans included, are merely sophisticated biochemical algorithms. When we understand this, and when AI systems can outperform human algorithms in decision-making and pattern recognition, it leads to a dramatic shift in authority. The humanist emphasis on feelings and free will may soon give way to the supremacy of data-driven systems. This transformation carries serious implications. If data becomes the most important asset in society, those who control the data will control the future. Harari warns that power may concentrate in the hands of a tiny elite who own the world's most powerful data-crunching systems. These new data priests could reshape economies, politics, and even personal lives without accountability or transparency. Harari also explores the tension between the need for individual privacy and the demand for ever more data. Dataism encourages transparency and interconnectedness, but at what cost? When human thoughts and desires are treated as just another input in the global data flow, personal identity and freedom risk being reduced to statistical artifacts. Despite these dangers, Harari acknowledges the profound opportunities dataism presents. A connected world driven by data could solve complex problems like climate change, pandemics, and inequality, if managed wisely. The challenge is whether humans can build systems that harness the power of data without losing sight of ethics, compassion, and individual dignity. In his final message, Harari leaves readers with a powerful question. Are we still in control of our destiny, or are we becoming small components in a vast data processing network? The future, he suggests, will be determined not just by technological breakthroughs, but by the philosophical choices we make. Will we remain human-centered beings, or surrender to the logic of the algorithm? Now that we've glimpsed the future through the eyes of Homo Deus, the question is no longer what technology can do, but what we will choose to do with it. Will we become masters of our tools, or slaves to our own creations? If these questions sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, or simply made you pause and reflect, then don't stop here. This journey through tomorrow is just beginning. In the next videos, we all dive deeper into the ideas shaping our world, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the decline of human agency. So if you believe that understanding the future is the first step to shaping it, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and explore the next chapter with us. Because the future doesn't belong to those who wait, it belongs to those who learn, reflect, and act.